Resident Evil didn't invent the survival horror genre as we know it. That distinction belongs to 1992's Alone in the Dark. But it is a franchise that popularized the genre, and as a result has become the standard bearer. Over the series' 20-year history, it has evolved and changed to keep up with modern gameplay mechanics, and pre-rendered backdrops were ditched in favor of fully 3D modeled environments. Grid-based tank controls and fixed camera angles evolved into a tight, over-the-shoulder perspective with swifter character movement, and a dedicated single-player experience has been replaced by cooperative gameplay. While no one can accuse the franchise of failing to evolve, it's entirely fair to criticize what it has evolved into. Starting with Resident Evil 4, the series morphed into more of an action game, alienating purists but ultimately appealing to a larger audience. Resident Evil 6 is Capcom's attempt to give both purists and newcomers an agreeable middle ground by splitting the game into 4 smaller campaigns with different protagonists and gameplay styles. The problem is that Capcom's attempt to please everyone has given us a game that fully pleases no one.
We met? You jarheads all look the same to me, pal. Sorry. You've got to be kidding me. My mistake.
Players take control of Leon Kennedy, Chris Redfield, Jake Muller, and Ada Wong in 4 separate but interwoven campaigns in an effort to combat the C-Virus. It's a globe-spanning whodunit, though players will have cracked the game's mysteries long before the reveal. Players will benefit from having played the other titles in the series in order to have an understanding of the backgrounds of each character. The problem with Resident Evil 6's narrative is that it attempts to be a bigger, more bombastic version of the events in previous games, but it only manages to feel needlessly convoluted and dry. The narratives of previous Resident Evil titles have had a silly B-movie charm while lovingly fleshing out the game's mythos with countless files and documents. The increase in scope and size ruins the B-movie charm, but is still too absurd to have blockbuster appeal. The characters have been written into corners and their individual narratives are so complex and independent of each other that this attempt to write these series favorites into the same chain of events is forced and clumsy. It's clear that a narrative reboot is in order for the franchise to retain the charm and quality the first games were known for.
Alright, Simmons. Let's see what you're hiding.
Gameplay has received an overhaul that moves Resident Evil further towards pure action. Characters can now aim while moving and heal with the press of a button. While these tweaks are convenient, they take away much of the tension present in previous entries of the franchise. A clunky Gears of War style cover system has also been implemented, pushing the gameplay too far from the series' roots. Puzzles are restricted to Leon and Ada's campaign, further betraying the roots of the series. In addition to these changes, the game features idiotic cinematic action sequences on motorcycles, jets, and snowmobiles that offer needless spectacle. The attempt to force these visually complex and flashy moments into the game cheapens the whole experience. Between the gunplay and watching your characters survive plane crashes, car crashes, helicopter crashes, and surviving falls from high places, a few zombies don't really pose a credible threat. With its ultra-resilient characters, Resident Evil 6 could be reskinned as a Justice League game with little effort. As with other action games, expect an irritating amount of stick waggling and button mashing thanks to copious QuickTime events. A spare controller might be required. The melee system has been overhauled, as well as offering a number of context-sensitive commands that frankly make it completely overpowered. Seriously, you can punch your way through half the game on professional difficulty. It has never been easier to conserve ammo in Resident Evil, though it's not like the game isn't generous in that regard anyway. Speaking of conserving ammo, you will actually be spending most of your time dumping it on the ground thanks to a miserable inventory system. Your characters carry around more guns than John Matrix during the finale of Commando, but it doesn't leave much room for bullets. There is also no item swapping between AI or human partners, and the UI itself is atrocious. Each campaign generally offers players a different flavor, and some try to recall previous games in the franchise. Leon's campaign is our favorite, since it is generally the most traditional. There are few puzzles in the environments, and his campaign is the most atmospheric in the game. Chris's campaign is pretty much an unofficial Gears of War title, emphasizing gunplay and taking players through a fictional war-torn Eastern European country called Edonia. It's the weakest campaign in the game, as a result of its fixation with bullets and chest-high walls. Jake Muller's campaign is interesting at first, since he and series darling Sherry Birkin have to face off against a nemesis-like creature called the Ustanak. Unlike Resident Evil 3 and Resident Evil 2's Scenario B featuring Tyrant, the game design telegraphs the appearance of the Ustanak, killing any tension or sense of unpredictability this unstoppable beast might have otherwise provided. The Ustanak also facilitates some of the obnoxious action set pieces that force players into watching shitty, bloated, cinematic sequences while mashing buttons during QuickTime events. Since Ada was intended to take her campaign on alone, it's more about stealth and offers several puzzles. It works well enough and comes out as one of the stronger campaigns. Having several interconnected campaigns also means that you replay the same segments with multiple characters, and it's completely unnecessary and lazy. If you are not playing the same sections with different characters, you can expect to experience the same gameplay gimmicks, like finding 3 keys in a labyrinth of hallways while being chased by unkillable regenerators. It's like waking up in Bill Murray's shoes in Groundhog Day, only worse. Boss fights are also a low point in the series' history. They are often bullet sponges, and there isn't really any kind of satisfying feedback indicating that you're actually hurting them. Given the game's near total shift towards action and an already terrible UI, the game might as well have health meters for bosses. While it may sound like this is the most awful Resident Evil game to date, the truth is that it was one of the best action games on the market when it was released. When seen as a competitor to titles like Gears of War, its stumbles and inconsistencies are far more forgivable. The frustrating thing is there are moments in the game that are excellent and are a sign of what could have been if this game focused on being a Resident Evil game first and pleasing a mass audience second. We expect moody atmosphere, slower paced gameplay, and tension from anything in a box that says Resident Evil. In their attempt to give everyone something to like about this game, they have created a game that lacks cohesion and focus. After experiencing one of Resident Evil 6's standout moments, it doesn't take long before the game has you trudging through more cover-based shooting bullshit or waggling your stick like you're having a seizure. It's a schizophrenic experience that is simultaneously flawed and yet offers enough satisfaction to play through its meaty 20+ hour campaign. If that wasn't enough, Mercenaries mode is present and in many ways benefits from the tweaks of the gameplay. It's a faster, more visceral experience that retains most of what made Mercs an exciting experience in previous games. Sadly, its lack of difficulty and the raid mode available in the Revelation series is such a step up from Mercs that it's hard to enjoy it as much as we did a decade ago in Resident Evil 4. There's also a versus mode which allows players to play as the creatures in another player's campaign, but clunky controls make this a dull and otherwise unworthy experience.
Go now!
We really hate speaking ill of Resident Evil 6 since it's probably Capcom's most ambitious game ever. Its 4 campaigns plus Mercenaries mode equates to hours of entertainment for fans. Each campaign attempts to use some of the best aspects of previous games to give players a total package. Yet, when it all comes together, the only thing that makes it feel like a Resident Evil game are the familiar faces of Chris, Ada, Leon, and Sherry. In an age where we often get so little for our buck, Capcom tried to give us everything we could want, but it's so inconsistent, wasting time and effort to give players glitz and spectacle instead of tension and scares. It would seem that the survival horror genre that we fell in love with in the 90s is dead. The Twitch fodder hide-and-seek games that are now considered survival horror are mechanically shallow. We hope that the Resident Evil 2 remake will remind Capcom why the franchise was captivating in the first place, and they can give one of our favorite franchises a proper reboot. Until then, we have 4 flawed campaigns, each offering glimpses of brilliance that are textbook examples of how you can have everything and nothing at the same time.